Is it recording?
It is recording now.
Okay, here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I am your host, Brian Snyder. And as usual, I'm always excited to be here with Deprofessionalized Intellectual, author, activist, educator, mentor, and dear friend, Gustavo Esteva. Welcome.
Hi, Brian. Good to see you.
Excellent
Now,
to hear your voice. Let me just turn off my screen reader because I'm getting notification about bandwidth. Hold on. Oops, that should stop, I think. Hold on. Okay. So, welcome. And so we're going to kind of talk you were going to give kind of an overview of what is happening in the world, which I'm grateful because I have no idea what's going on because I'm exhausted every day. And so, please share.
it is an extreme way of barbarism going, particularly in Israel and Colombia. They are literally killing people, a lot of people every day, including children. Um, this is the horror. It's really terrible how they are using all the forces of the government to kill people in Israel, Palestinians, in Colombia, all kind of people, and this is really terrible. But Brian, we can be really horrified and criticize that. I can consider equally barbaric that the president of the U.S. considers that Israel has the right to defend itself, to defend its territory. What? What territory? Where is Israel defending its territory? What's the invasion of the Palestinian of Israel, etc., etc.? But that is not my point. My point is that we cannot compare, put everyone in the same box and consider that these two horrible guys, Netanyahu and Duque, are exactly the same like Biden or any other president or our president, Lopez Obrador in Mexico. They are not the same, of course. They are of different quality, human quality, moral quality, etc. But I would like to talk about other kind of barbarism that we all accept in all our countries, and that we are blind to it, and that we are even loving it. That is the point today. It is not to put everyone in the same box, but what we have today in the world, all over the world, beyond any government, beyond any of these characters, the goods and the bad ones, what we have is this barbarism in the daily life. Um, I would like to use two examples. Two examples in which Mexico is a champion, but you are just behind us. The first one is that Mexico is the country with the highest proportion of obesity. And we have a very serious problem of child obesity. You are just a little behind. 38% of the Americans are obese. And we all know that this is a very serious problem that creates a lot of problems for many people. And this is the highest level of risk in COVID times, meaning a third of the people that died because of COVID were people with obesity, suffering obesity. Well, let's think for a moment on this. There is a group of corporations, there is an elite a group, a big, a certain number of corporations that are today, every day, with full awareness of what they are doing, killing and sickening people all over the world. They are producing these toxic products, these damaging, sickening products, and they are selling them, and they're convincing everyone that they must take them. This is pure barbarism. How they dare to produce this, how they dare to sell this, how they dare to advertise and promote this, and how all the governments on earth accept this and even bless it and accept a complicity in this big operation. We can do the same with another area that is we are the world champions in the consumption of bottled water. We in Mexico. You are not far behind. You are also consumers of bottled water. But three-quarters of the people in Mexico, of the families in Mexico, consume bottled water. The price of the bottled water is more or less 500 times the cost of that water. And we are producing it and using the plastic. We are producing 1 billion bottles of plastic per year in the world. It is absolute horror.
And then we have that giant plastic garbage pile floating out in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. I guess it's the size of Texas, or it's probably larger by now.
And incredible damaging. We know that. It's creating an amazing damage in the ocean and through the ocean to the whole planet, to our lives. And my point, Brian, is that we love that.
Now, when you're talking about the products that they're selling, you're talking about genetically modified food, the processed food, um, things that are packaged and bought in most grocery stores throughout the world. Coca-Cola products, Nestle with water. I know that's an issue in California because they're trying to buy up water rights and so on. So yeah.
Yes, it is junk food, but it is basically most of the food that we are eating, most of the food they are selling in the market. It is next to impossible now for you in the United States to escape from consuming genetically modified grains. You cannot find a way to. It is next to impossible to eat wood rice or wood wheat that is or wood corn that is not genetically modified.
Now,
And
I should mention, I want to say somewhere, I can't remember when it was, I want to say it's like 2013 or somewhere between 2013 to 2015. The A group of Nobel laureates wrote a letter stating that genetically modified foods are perfectly healthy. People should consume them, and that was based on a academic report by the Academy of Sciences. And when I looked up the authors of that report from the Academy of Sciences, every one of them had a connection to a bio company like Monsanto, DuPont, um, all these, various biotech. They had been paid by those companies to either do lectures or research or whatever.
then the question, Brian, is why we still love science and scientists.
Hmm.
It's part of the corruption, it's part of the barbarism. They are also criminals. They are participating in these crimes. They are those generating the products, producing this kind of poison, of toxic kind of things. That they are part of the operation in the production, in the real the notion, the conception of these kind of things. in the implementation of it, producing and then selling it with these kind of declarations that are absolutely irresponsible. Uh, I think we now know in 2021 we have all kinds of proofs of all the damages produced by genetically modified organisms.
But we should also kind of make a differentiation between there's corporate science or science for profit, and then there are actual scientists that are, you know, trying to do good things with the scientific method.
The question is, you can no longer talk about something that is called scientific method and what we call science all over the world is science. Science is research funded by the corporations or the government. That is not really good research.
Mhm.
That is the problem. That it is very difficult to find decent people trying to do decent research for some specific purpose. It is very difficult, Brian. Seriously, seriously. You can go to the universities and you can see all the universities corrupted by the corporations, getting the money from the corporations, accepting the money from the corporations. You can see all the research programs, how the people get the money for the research, and you can see we are that is my point today, Brian. We are in a wave of barbarism in which all the elites, corporate elites, the government elites, the scientific elites, all these elites are in a barbaric mood, in a criminal mood. They are
Because they're
literally
using science to um, create a profitable outcome. So the companies are saying, we need this outcome. Give us the scientific facts which will prove that outcome so that we can make a profit.
please, if you see the research for any professor, any investigator, any researcher in any university to get the approval for his her program of research, he needs to accommodate to certain rules, to certain fields, to certain areas that are not decent, that they are not doing the research needed. Of course, we have information because there are good people, nice people around giving us the proper information. Of course, there are still good people around. I am not saying that everyone, but I am saying that we need to acknowledge, and that is our theme today, that the people at the top, the elite, economic, political, and scientific elite, are in a criminal mood, in a barbarism that we cannot trust them. We cannot put our hopes on them. And our point is that we love them. We are used to love them. We have been educated, scheduled to love them, to accept them. And this is a very, very old story. It's very deep in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds. Um, to love the power that oppresses us. We have been educated in the idea that the parents, all the parents, that to be a good parent is to be the boss for the children, to control the children, to spoil their childhood, to punish the children, to repress the children, to control the children, since they are babies. And of course, we loved our parents and we accepted what they were doing because that was for our own good, for our improvement, to impose on us all kind of things. And that continued in the school. It is very difficult to conceive an institution more oppressive than the school. And it's in the school where they are destroying the childhood, really destroying the childhood, creating all kinds of problems for the children. Uh, Brian, in your country, more than half of the children are put on the drugs because they are children, because they want to behave like children. They want to play, they want to move, they want to see around, and then they are punished with the diagnosis of good doctors saying that they have attention deficit or they are suffering hyperactivity, and then they need to be put on the drugs, and they consume drugs almost forever for many, many, many years. But my point is that they are oppressing us. Just the idea, children that want to play and go around I are forced to be in a chair listening to a lot of stupid, boring things that they are forced to consume. This is what we are doing. And the point is, we learn to love them. Most of us, perhaps all of us, loved a few teachers, loved a lot, a few teachers,
And the
adore.
irony is that's how you and I met was when I was working on my second master's degree. That's how we met. You were teaching a class on social justice education, and you did the opposite of teaching, which was I thought was brilliant and beautiful. And we've described that in previous. By the
Yes,
way, everybody that's listening and watching, if this is a continuing conversation, I apologize for not um, front loading the conversation with that. But there are previous episodes with Gustavo that you can listen to that kind of flow from one to another. So um, keep that in mind. But anyway, continue. The other thing is discussed, and I can't remember where I read it, but thinking about the idea of um, the classroom bell, that it really is a tool for obedience. That every time you hear the bell, it's that Pavlovian response that, oh, I have to leave this class and go to the next one. Oh, a recess is over. I have to go back to class.
yes, yes. That is it. That is it. And the problem is that we are educated to love that.
Mhm.
That is how we internalize not only obedience, but love to the power that oppresses us.
Yeah, and just thinking about it, I'm thinking about how I reacted to hearing the bell, and I remember if I was late and I heard the bell, it brought forth an immense amount of fear, like, oh, what shit? Well, how I'm going to be punished now? What's going to happen? Or the reverse, if I was in the classroom and I heard the bell, it was a relief. Oh, I'm okay. I'm not late. I'm not going to be punished. But it's that reward punishment system, which
Yes,
is part of our patriarchal culture.
yes, yes. That is, and in my experience, it is not easy to tell the parents you need to eliminate all kind of hierarchy at home. You are not the bosses of your children. You need to consider them as just humans like you, with limitations like we all have limitations. And the idea of teaching them everything should be suppressed. You don't need to force them today to learn how to wash their teeth. The children are immensely curious. They want to learn everything. They want to do everything the parents are doing. And all the children, when seeing the parents washing their teeth, will ask, "What are you doing? What is that? I want to do that." And that is the opportunity for them to learn when they want, not when the parents decide it's the proper time to do that. It is to have a different kind of relations with the children. I am seeing that around us in Unitera. We have a group of parents that are in the process of de-schooling their children, and we have now children that have been for years in a home that is free. And you can see immediately the difference, how amazing children they are raised that way, without the authority, without the oppression, without the imposition of everything, with all the curiosity open all the time, asking for things, and they know how to behave because they are treated as humans, decent people. And of course, we have patriarchy and horror and violence in the communities, but we basically have in the communities for all the children, since they are very little, the participation in the life of the community, full participation. That they are not discriminated against because they are only 3 years old. They are accepted in the fiestas, in the activities, in the political activities everywhere, and they can see and be with the adults whenever they want to be with the adults in all the activities. And most of the children are interested in seeing what is happening, why is the fiesta, and why they are doing this, what is this kind of things, and they are learning by themselves with approaching the guys that know the kind of things that they want, that they love, and then they learn in that moment to resist the power that oppresses them.
Yeah, when I think about school and I think back on it, I don't feel like I learned anything in the classroom per se. I feel like the things that I learned were talking with my friends or being interested in something so much so that I research it on my own. And that's where I felt like I learned the most. And I will say that there was I remember the first time in undergrad where I really loved being in the classroom was with a philosophy teacher. His name is Sandy Cohen, and it was just the idea that there was no hierarchy. I mean, he was basically an anarchist, but he took away the hierarchy. We were on the same level with him. He would ask us questions and say, "Read this. What do you think about this?" You know, it wasn't like he was trying to download us with information and have these goals for testing and all that shit that doesn't work.
That is the point. That is the basic point. And then it is perfect that you love a person like that because he or she is not oppressing you, is not
Yeah, that was the
imposing.
thing is I felt like he didn't have there wasn't any testing. He did assign reading and but I just remember the way he talked to us was like a friend. It was like or um it just felt like we had access to his knowledge because he wasn't trying to force it on us. He was just trying to say, what do you think about this?" And he was very humorous. I mean, I think humor is a huge part of learning because it kind of opens up the mind to start thinking. And that's what I think about George Carlin, the comedian. I think about him and the things that he would talk about is, especially I remember the first time watching Jammin' in New York, and he would talk about war and the ecological destruction that was happening, that what continues to happen. And it was just the way he used humor. It expressed the reality of what was going on, and we could accept it easier. And there's not much humor in most classrooms, but
But yes, that is one example. If we can see, if we see in the years how much, how many people learn things with Carlin, learned a lot, laughed a lot, learned a lot,
yeah,
open minds. But what we are discussing is the horror, Brian, is how we loved an authoritarian teacher, a rigid teacher, someone imposing on us the bell, the time, the square root, all these kind of things, and putting us sitting. Every child want to go around, not to be sitting in a chair for so many hours a day. Well, we had some of those teachers imposing on us that kind of things, and imposing of those with all the authority and telling us now do this, now sit, now go do this and do the other thing, etc. And the problem is that we loved some of them. We hated some of them, of course, but we loved some of them.
Well, the other issue is most of the time, in my experience, especially with mathematics, I think about like being in geometry in high school, and I just felt like there was no practical application of that. And geometry is a very practical set of skills. So, but I don't. I just remember numbers and having to use what do you call it, a protractor, and not having any practical application to real life. And that was the disconnect for me because ironically, even though I'm blind, I'm extremely visual and I need to see and touch and like understand how that math relates to the real world. And I feel like for the most part, in my experience growing up in the early 80s and and in the 90s, um, there there was no connection between the real world and the things that we were supposed to learn.
Because that's not the idea, because the curriculum is not conceived to really give us preparation for life and work. Is the curriculum, and we can study that curriculum. That is a global curriculum today. In all these years, it is a curriculum designed to shape us in a certain way.
It's
For
a curriculum of obedience.
of obedience, first of all, but something even worse. For example, to have a mathematical language and a mathematical mind is part of the education. And that is absolutely horrible, absolutely unacceptable.
In
And it
terms
has
of
no,
like, I'm
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, no. It is not, it has no connection with real life. It is just to have the kind of mind that can accommodate better in the system, into the system.
And that I think that mind and tell me what you think. That mind is a mind that classifies, categorizes, judges, and puts things into certain categories for whether they're good or bad or useful or valuable, and so on.
And takes abstractions for real without the ability to connect that abstraction with real life. Have we talked any time about Munir Faché?
I
No.
don't think so.
I think it's a perfect example of what we are talking about. Um, he is a Palestinian guy. He and his family were forced to leave Gaza at one point, and they moved to Boston. They arrived to Boston, and then they put him in the school. And at one point, they put him in Harvard, and he became a brilliant doctor in mathematics. And after some time, he was occupying the highest position someone can occupy in Harvard in mathematics as a great mathematician. And then he quit and he left Harvard and he came back to Gaza to live in Gaza and to accept the conditions in Gaza and to live with his family. And then with his family, he discovered that what he describes, that his mother knew analytical geometry better than any doctor in Harvard because his illiterate mother was a weaver. And he said, for a person weaving um, a cloth for a woman requires a kind of calculations, a geometric calculations of immense complexity that I, as a mathematical doctor, cannot really be even vaguely fulfill because I don't have the capacity to do that. And my mother was doing that every day in her daily life as a weaver. And then we are seeing that is the difference. The kind of mathematics that you learn in the school are basically irrelevant for the real life, are useless, most of them. Uh,
Can you say his name one more time?
Munir Fashe. You can
Okay.
find some of his stuff in internet. Munir, Munir, and Fashe, Fasheh.
Okay.
Fashe, Munir Fashe. He is fantastic. He has a lot of beautiful lectures, trying abandoning all this stuff, all these kind of things, and trying to connect again with the people and doing things with the people. He works a lot with young people in Gaza and in Palestine and Lebanon. He's still living there and doing fantastic things. But the main argument of Munir is how disconnected is the whole process of education from kindergarten to doctorate, from real life. They are not preparing people for life and work. That is the point. That is the function of education. Supposedly, we are getting in the school attitudes, abilities, knowledge, capacities to live and to work. And this is not true. Simply, it is not true. We are not getting in the school the kind of things that can enrich our lives, that help us to live better our daily life, and they are not giving us the tools to do some productive activities in the proper way. They are shaping us to accept instructions, to be shaped as obedient slaves of the guys that we will impose on us a way activities to do.
Did I hear you correctly? I mean, it makes sense to me, but I want to make sure I heard you say they are shaping us to be obedient to our own destruction.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And my God, it's Brian. Today, all over the world, they are still promoting and imposing on most people on Earth jobs that are stupid, degraded, without interest, and you need to do this 40 hours a week, 40 years of your life, and end every day exhausted and unable to do any other thing uh, because you were destroyed at the rate of 8 hours a day. And this is the only way to live in this society. This is the society we have created. This is the society presented as the best way to live. This is the model of the American way of life, and the American way of life was predicated as the best way of life in the world. And then millions and millions of people were educated in the idea that the best you can do is to try to achieve that way of life as the best way to live in this planet. This is what our rebellion. This is because we are at a point that that specific system is dying, that we are seeing they are now barbaric because they are seeing the system dying. They can no longer do what they were doing in the past, and they are now imposing more and more stupid, horrible things. And then now we are resisting that barbarism. But this is the moment in which we can see that system dying, and then trying something else, and see how Brian, most people on Earth today in May 2021, most people on Earth are today fully aware that the kind of things they need to learn for their own life are not learning in the school, and they are looking at alternative ways of learning. And we are more and more involved in alternative ways of learning out of all institutions, out of education, to learn how to live a good life, a dignified life, a life worth of being lived. That is why we need to rescue you from this job, and you and millions of people. Uh,
Yeah, I think about that all the time. I think about my life and the things I've done in my life. And where I get into trouble, so to speak, is every time I get into a job that I think that I have to do, I end up going insane, uh, being depressed, um, being exhausted, and then I realize that, when I do these things, I go, why am I doing this? I know what I want to do with my life. And I mean, I want to be creative. I want to make people laugh, and I want to uh, tell stories because that's what I'm good at. And I know I can do it. It's just that, how do you make the leap between the things that doing something that you love and then being able to survive off off it, I mean, George Carlin, that was one of the things he said. One of the greatest things to be able to do is to do what you love. The next thing is to be paid for it. And the next thing is to be recognized for it.
Now we are in the process in which we are abandoning the question of payment.
Right,
The
right.
second condition, yes, to abandon is to abandon the economic logic.
But he was talking in terms of the existence, that the context of his time.
Yes, yes, that
Yeah.
is
I
right.
mean, he did comedy, in the 50s and the 60s and throughout until his death.
Yeah,
But he always commented on the horrors of capitalism, the horrors of education.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then what we need, we know that what you can do. We acknowledge that we are now a certain number of people, not just your friends. There is a number of people now that know that you can tell stories and laugh and do a lot of things. You have a series of skills and talents and will and internal heart to do a lot of things that can be very good for you and for us. And now what we need to do is that you can incorporate yourself, and that is not easy in your context, to life, if you can live well a decent life doing just that, not forced to do any other thing, not forced to do something just for the money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the difficult part, is the process of doing something merely to make money and survive. It takes something from your soul. It takes
Absolutely.
something from your spirit. It takes your creativity away. I mean, I that's what dealing with right now, is like, how do I break free of those confines of having to make money to support my family? That's the question. Some people are very fortunate and they can get out of it, but um, I mean, a lot of people want to do that. So I don't know what the fuck to do, but
But that is exactly the point. That is exactly what we need to do. And this is one of the blessings of COVID, that millions and millions of people are forced to do exactly that, to escape from plant prisons because they don't have any option. They can no longer find a job. That is the point. They can no longer destroy themselves doing something stupid just for the money, because they can no longer find that kind of opportunities. They are forced to reinvent themselves. And this is our daily experience everywhere. Of course, we have the example. Oaxaca was a city, Oaxaca, and was a city organized for tourism. And then it was not only the thousands of people employed in restaurants and hotels, but it was thousands and thousands of people producing goods and services for the tourists. And then suddenly you have no longer tourists. And then these people can no longer find an income, any kind of income, any kind of job associated with what they were doing for many years, not necessarily with pleasure. Perhaps some artisanos creating some beautiful things with their hands, they were enjoying what they were doing. But doing this all the time to sell to the tourists is not great. They can use their talent in a different way. And now they were scheduled, programmed, forced to do this to survive. Well, now they will not find a job in that. The tourists will not come back. Some of them are coming. Some of them, many Americans, desperate or being confined or being desperate in the whole situation of COVID, they are traveling and they are escaping and they come to Oaxaca because they know that it's a good place to come. There are a few tourists coming, but never we will have again the number of tourists keeping all these thousands of people uh, alive. And alive, if we accept that is to live, it's really to be alive to do that kind of things.
Mhm.
But the point is, they can no longer do that, and then they need to reinvent themselves. They are forced to reinvent themselves. We are exactly in that process. And in that process, we are discovering a lot of things, a lot of talents, a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities that millions of people are now trying to create, are trying to follow. In a very real sense, we are in that critical moment of creating the new society, but with a lot of pain, Brian, because because of the horror, because of the barbarism, because we are exposed to all kind of horrors around us because of that barbaric elite that now governs and controls the world, or at least try to control the world and try to govern the world.
Yeah, I mean, it, everything is so precarious, and you know, I think it's critical at this time to showcase individuals and people that are doing things to, like the Zapatistas, of course, creating a world where many worlds are embraced and they're autonomous in how they live, and they have their own schools and systems of healthcare, and it's very beautiful, but it's very unique to that place.
Yes, yes, I know, because first you have amazing movements like Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
and you have amazing people, um, and you have all the time in the daily life in America. Please think for a moment what happened in the mind, in the heart of Damela Frazier. That was the young woman, 17 years old, that took the cellular and took all the video for the assassination of Floyd.
Mhm.
That allowed for the very exceptional case of indicting the criminal. That is a very important example, a very important case in the history of the United States, how the whole process existed. And the whole process existed, and it was possible what we have today after the trial of the assassin, because of this young woman that took her cellular and has the courage to tape the whole crime. Well,
It was horrifying to watch.
absolutely, absolutely. She knew that she personally could not stop the crime. She cannot come and stop the police, but she could take, she has the courage to have her cellular and use it to tape the whole crime, the horrible crime. But you have
Yeah, I
people.
mean, Dave Chappelle, as a comedian, he did a video specifically about that, and it was the video's title is the amount of time that George Floyd was being held down, and I can't think it was like
It means
8:30 or something like that, 8 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. And one of the things that Dave Chappelle talked about, and he related to his own family, but George Floyd was crying out, "Mom, mommy," as he was, his last breaths, and thinking about the historical context of that. It was I mean, it was very powerful. And I'll send it to you because I think it's worth watching.
Please do, please do.
Yeah.
Um, well, that is happening, and at the same time, we have people that discovers that the important point today is to destroy that way of life, the American way of life, that was so much celebrated. Um, One of the things that we know we owe to Mr. Trump is that made evident the real nature of the American society that was previously denied. Now it's clear for everyone what kind of society you created. And now more and more people are resisting, are saying, no, no, we don't want this society. We cannot accept any longer this kind of society with this kind of consumption, with this kind of patterns, with this kind of jobs, with this kind of police, with all this. That was the model. That was because part of I can see the problem. If you are an American children, an American young man, you hear all the time that America is the best society in the world. That what you have is the best, that everybody is looking for it and trying to get it, and that is why you have so many migrants that want to dream the American dream. And then you think, okay, well, this is perfect, this is great, we have the best thing over the world. You were educated that way. You were educated in the permanent celebration of the American way of life, of the American society, of what America was doing in the world.
And
Was the
that kind of idealism of American idealism is perpetuated in entertainment. I, I did this on purpose because I wanted to see how horrible it was. Because there's a film called American Sniper, and the star is Bradley Cooper, and it basically talks about that famous sniper. I can't remember his name, but the point is, in the movie, he's like, "Why are you doing this?" or something, putting yourself in harm's way as a Navy SEAL. And he says, "Because America is the greatest country on earth, and I'm going to defend it." And the movie is really disgusting. Really, it perpetuates that John Wayne bullshit. American rugged individualism. We're going to go in and kick ass, and it's a horrible movie. But I wanted to watch it to remember what our entertainment system does, which is perpetuate that propaganda, that American exceptionalism bullshit, and how destructive it is.
Please think the first 20 years of your life, every minute of your life, you were experiencing that kind of things.
Yeah,
America is the greatest country on earth. We are the best, and then we are leading the world, and then everyone wants to follow us, and we are really fantastic. And what we have is the best humans can have in this planet. And then
yeah,
you started to accept that as the best, and it is absolutely horrible. Now you
yeah.
know.
Even in cartoons, I remember watching GI Joe, which is a basically a military cartoon. And it's, there's classic American iconography of, the red, white, and blue, and, GI Joe saves the day. And but it's it was that propaganda, that brainwashing was always there from the beginning, whether it be through entertainment or education. It's infused in every aspect of our life.
And we all were contaminated. My brother and I were running every week to get the cartoons in the paper. When we were 6, 7 years old, and the cartoons were coming from the US.
Yeah.
Clearly, all these cartoons, horrible, terrible cartoons, educating. But that is why we accepted when Truman sold us the idea of development and then classified us under development. Yes, we wanted that through the cartoons, through many other images. We were admiring the American way of life. And when Truman said, "Oh, you can have it all, you can have everything that we have, we will share with you our advances." Oh, that is great. Yes, we want development. We want what you have. Um, you educated the whole world in that path. We now know what it is. It's the horror, and now that is why millions of us are abandoning it, and not only abandoning it for our daily lives. It is basically demolishing it, dismantling it. We don't want this any longer in the planet. We don't want this to continue destroying everything. And because we are in this mood, and because the system is over, they become barbaric. And then we have this wave of barbarism all over the planet because these people are now, the corporations, fighting for their lives. They need to use all kind of forces to impose what is still the dominant mood. But they know very well that it is dying. They know how many of us are resisting, how many of us are every day struggling to dismantle that. They
Now,
know that.
let's talk a little bit about the resistance because there's various forms of resistance. And can you describe what is effective resistance?
Um, the most important point is really looks stupid, but the most important point is to reduce every day your consumption of irrelevant, destructive things that we have been educated to consume. And this includes moderating or even eliminating the use of some fantastic technologies. When I see my friends in Massachusetts that after first they are still getting a job, they are still forced to get some dollars to survive, but they bought a piece of land and now they are producing their own food. And they took a year ago an important decisions. I think we discussed that here. An important, very important decisions. I think you must interview them. I will give you the contact to have a conversation with them. They
Yeah.
decided not to use the cellular. That is a very courageous decision. They
I,
did not throw the cellulars. They keep the cellulars just for emergencies.
mhm.
They're not using the cellular any longer. That is very important. Very, very important.
Yeah, it's very addictive. Yeah, I mean, comedian Bill Burr was talking about he spent some time alone. He has a family, and he was talking about just sitting down and eating lunch by himself. And he said it was so difficult not to pick up the fucking phone and look at who's trying to talk to him or trying to say hello to 50 people or whatever like
Yes.
and um it's very addictive because that's the way it's designed. And it's funny because I think there was a study done about how like social media like Facebook and all that shit, um it's designed to be like a slot machine in a casino.
And it is not only those people seeing videos, etc., all the kind of things that they offer in the cellular, but it is not only the young men and women that are talking with their friends for hours with a cellular,
Hmm.
but it is all of us, Brian, calling people, even short conversations, just notice for no reason,
Hmm.
useless. Then it is an addiction, yes. Then we need to reduce that, to reduce to a real minimum the use. Yes, these technologies can have a use, a good use. Well, we need to reduce all these technologies to a good use. I think what we are doing right now is good, has a meaning. People can enjoy what we are talking about. Um, I think we are enjoying the possibility of using Zoom, but we know how Zoom can be, what can happen with Zoom. And then we need to limit the number of hours we dedicate to Zoom every week. every month to Zoom and all these other technologies. And this includes the kind of clothes we buy, the kind of food we buy, the kind of things that we are consuming all the time. We have in Unitierra now a kind of joke that it is what is the product that we eliminated from our consumption this week. We need to suppress full lines of products in our daily consumption that we don't notice. We don't see how we were educated to consume something that we can eliminate easily. That it is no longer, it's not to give pleasure, to give a good life, to produce a good life, but to transform all of us in slaves of our addictions. Then you asked me for what is the most important point. For me, the most important point is to reduce every day our consumption, identifying in what we are consuming every day, what is the kind of things that are damaging, irrelevant, destructive of the world, how many, how much destruction we are causing just because of the cellulars, because of the use of the cellulars or any other thing that we are using.
And yeah, you're talking about smartphones and mobile devices, iPads and things like that.
Then in some cases, it is just abandoning the use
Yeah.
because it is irrelevant, it is not necessary. In other cases, like what we have discussed, it is the substitution. It is producing your own food because what they are offering in the market is absolutely unacceptable. And then, but that is something that we know, we have discussed that millions and millions of Americans and Mexicans are currently trying to produce the most of their food they can. And it is so easy, so joyful, so fantastic to learn how to have just this little tomato at home, and then eating that tomato you yourself cultivated. It is such a pleasure, it's such so good that more and more people are trying to do that whenever have the time, because perhaps you don't have much time to do that. Brian, you need to find time to do that kind of things.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I really appreciate the U.S. solidarity economy model, and also what organizations like Cooperation Humboldt in Northern California are doing. They're creating their own gardens for people, building gardens for people, creating food pantries, getting access to a food forest. It's amazing the work they're doing. And we're trying to do that here in Nevada County with Cooperation Nevada County, but I'm a shitty organizer and it fell apart, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that it'll start again because it needs to be done and it's critical here. There's a lot of places to grow food here, and there is a lot of food being grown here, but it's being sold to the Bay Area for too expensive restaurants there.
Yes, and then you will discover very, very soon that associated with it is what we call healing from health. Then instead of being dependent of this horrible system of health sickening us, then associated with food, we are finding healing practices of every kind that to keep us healthy. And that is also, and it is again a joyful activity. It's not something you are suffering because you need to do that. It is not doing exercises and exhausting exercises and running in the mornings, etc. No, it is just doing the right things in the right moment, and doing something, especially if you are have a special weakness, whatever it is, changing your way of life.
Well, I can tell
In
you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just going to share my experience of when I farmed on a local farm here. It was one of the most beautiful, fulfilling, profound experiences of my entire life. And I only did it for probably 6 months or something like that. But I loved it. I loved the physical activity. There was no smartphones. There wasn't even mobile service in the area, so we couldn't even use them. But through the process of connecting to the earth, planting, being connected to the soil was a healing. It was so healing and beautiful. Not only that, the conversations that we had were so much deeper than I had ever experienced. They were about our humanity, about how we felt, about this existence, and it gave us time to actually have a conversation as opposed to like running from work and then picking up some food and just getting through the day. And that's what American life is getting through the fucking day, the end of the day, so you can sit down and go to sleep. And that's, I feel that now. That's like my favorite part of the day is getting into bed and letting the day go. That's the joy. That's the height of my day.
Yeah, that is exactly that's what should be changed. How the idea would be to wake up and to say, oh, today I will do this and I will do that, and I have so many things to do that I want, that I enjoy. To have a day full of creative, joyful activities.
That's what I had when I was doing theater. When I was acting or directing or doing something creative, I woke up excited and wanted to start the day. I get up now and I'm just like I'm waiting to go to sleep. The first thing I get up when I get up and go, I can't wait to go to sleep this evening.
That is why we need to change that. Hopefully, we will succeed one of these days.
Yeah, and those listening and watching, please like, subscribe, review. That would help. Um, so thank you. So, but yeah, is there anything else in terms of resistance that you would feel is useful?
Well, the point, because of our theme today, is to say we need to clarify what we love and what is what we must resist. I don't like the idea of hating, but it is just to know what is the power, the kind of power, economic or political power, that oppresses us, to resist that kind of thing. Instead of loving it, we need to resist. We need to see that consumption is a force that we need to resist. That is the fascist that we carry inside us. The our attitude forcing us to love what oppresses us. What we have been discussing today is the American way of life, consumption, all these kind of things are oppressing us. We need to resist them.
Well, let me
That
let me let me add one more element because I feel it's important because I feel it in myself. I feel that what this culture, this American culture and the society, which is very violent, by the way, as you're aware, that there's something about being American, and I would say it's maybe in terms of how because we're traumatized by this American life, and and the issue with that is when we're in pain, we many Americans often externalize it, whether it be physical violence or verbal violence. And that's something that is so difficult, even in myself. Like, I mean, I'm not that I'm physically violent in any way, but I can be verbally violent
yes,
because it's so fucking easy to do. To just be like, if you're angry or whatever, the closest person to you, you externalize that, and that's like the root of everything. I feel is that destructive nature to go, okay, I'm in pain, I'm going to inflict pain on others so that they can feel what I feel. And I think the idea is to, in that moment of pain, and I'm trying to do it myself, is when I'm in pain, and I'm in a lot of pain, a lot, because of experiencing this loss of eyesight and the fact that, you know, I do have to work to make a living, and all the things that have to go along with that. I'm often like, I have to stop when I'm angry and I feel like I need to externalize it. I have to go, stop. This is destructive. It isn't coming from an empathetic and loving place. Stop. Stop. And so I'm mentioning that because I feel that's one of the critical things to rid ourselves of the violent tendency to externalize trauma and pain.
It is very important that you said that, Brian, because what we all know is that it's very difficult, it's next to impossible to keep inside us all this violence, anger, pain. And then we need to throw it out of us, and then we reproduce the whole system of violence and pain. And then it is very, very difficult to operate the transformation, to transform when they have been violent with you, and you have that violence inside you, you have suffered that violence, how to transform that in something joyful or gentle or loving or whatever. It's not easy, it's extremely difficult. You need a specific training to do that. Training, not someone training you, but your own training, your own learning, how to do that, how to transform that balance injected on you every minute of every day, how to transform that in something else, not to throw it, not to reproduce it in your relations with the rest of the world.
And I think about that with with those that are, because I was listening to a podcast with Dave Chappelle, the comedian, and he was talking about meeting very wealthy people, billionaires. And I think he was saying that this one billionaire said, you know, I um you know, all the other billionaires that I know are unhappy. And I think that that type of, whatever that psychology is, that desire for power and wealth, it is ultimately a self-destructive path. It's a completely not only self-destructive, but it's everything in it externalizes that destructiveness on others, and
Absolutely,
unfortunately on billions of people.
absolutely. That is the point. um, Unfortunately, Brian, I think we need to conclude.
Okay. All right.
uh,
So where should we start off for our next conversation?
I think that next time, I think we should start with the positive and creative things instead of today we were dedicated to the horror.
Okay.
We started with the horrors around, with Colombia and Israel and all these kind of things, with the horrors inside us, the fascists that we carry inside us, and all these horrors of the daily life, the American way of life or the Mexican way of life. Next time, perhaps we need to discuss stories, good stories, joyful stories of how we are resisting and how we are creating a different kind of life. One of the things is to study how millions of people, literally millions of people, resisted COVID in a different way, and created many different kind of things. Um, I have a beautiful story to tell. We will start next time with a beautiful story to tell that I heard just a week ago here in Oaxaca.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Gustavo Esteva. Deeply appreciate your time and your knowledge and sharing what is alive within you. Um, Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's talk soon. Our next session about very joyful things.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, everybody. This was The Blind Man in Black. I'm your host, Brian Snyder, here with Gustavo Esteva. You can find him. He's all over YouTube. Just type in his name, Gustavo Esteva. There's many videos of him having conversations like this and sharing his experience and knowledge, which is profoundly valuable. You can follow me on blindmaninblack.com, the YouTube channel, and Apple Podcast. And please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much, everybody. Now we're going to have our awkward ending. Thank you, Gustavo.
Thank you, Brian.
Abrazos.
Bye.